Hi, I'm Jess,
Hi, I'm Kristen.
and welcome to Rediscover, a space where we engage in authentic conversation about life as we grow through it and whatever comes up along the way.
Nothing is off the table here. We talk about the real stuff, the hard stuff, the beautiful moments, and everything under the sun.
Around here, we're always rediscovering, sharing empowering stories, and connecting our hearts and minds with every facet of life.
We invite you to be part of the conversation as we broaden our perspectives, release limitations, and grow to create our most joyful and fulfilling lives together.
So grab a cup of something cozy as we rediscover all the best parts of you
and bring a little magic into your day.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess.
Hi, I'm Kristen.
And welcome back to this month's episode of Rediscover and the first episode of 2024.
Happy New Year!
Oh my gosh. Sorry we're a couple weeks late here, but better late than never. We're just slowly rolling into the new year.
Listen, it's a lesson to not just dive into the new year. There's been so much hit the ground running, get a start on your resolutions. I'm like, what if we just took it easy?
Yes. One of my resolutions actually is to live more of a soft life, slow life. So I think this actually just aligns with that concept. So I'm actually doing really well on my resolutions already.
Yay. And I know part of me was like, she says this as she's traveling the world. But I think if there's one thing your specific brand of content has taught us, it's that you can actually do both. Like you can be in a cool place, but live slowly and more softly and just take it at your own pace. Because I know we've talked about this before, but traveling with a heavy itinerary that's full of so much stuff seems like the smart decision because you're you got to maximize your time. But then you're exhausted and it flies by and it's over and you're like, I need a vacation from that. Also, did we even do anything? So
it's actually crazy that you just said those exact words because the call I had before this was all about content strategy and thinking about those types of things. And I have never realized that that is a message pillar that I actually have in not only my content, but in my life too.
yeah.
Just recognizing that you can cultivate a life of this. Well, to kind of sidebar here. So I used to really kind of call what we did digital nomading or full-time traveling.
Mm-hmm.
But recently I've gravitated more towards slow travel as what we do because we do these month-long stays and we drag it out and we cultivate this slower lifestyle while still doing a lot. We'll have our days where we're hustling and pushing, but then we'll have a lot of days where we're chilling and just enjoying. And that's actually a really important thing to me and something that I think can translate as a really beneficial message to know you don't have to go travel the world and live this crazy intensity life. I don't want to bring that hustle culture into what we're doing now. But I also don't want to totally live the homebody life at this point in my life. So it's blending the two of those things, slow life and on the go. So very interesting, rediscovery that I was having today. And you just confirmed that. So thank you.
And it's so funny that you say that because I had that exact thought yesterday. And I was thinking about that because somebody asked me the where do you see yourself in 5 years question. I hate this question. It is a dumb question. I just think it's so silly to ask somebody where they see themselves in 5 years because you can visualize and that's different. Manifesting is different. But I feel like it's a loaded question because they're looking for a specific answer, right?
Yeah.
And it's just if the last few years have taught us anything, it's so impossible to say in 5 years I'm going to be doing this. Maybe, or maybe it'll be something different. But I think there's a difference between having a goal or working on manifesting something and being so dead set on that you forget that the detours can be just as great, if not better, because the plan you have might not be the master plan, and that's okay because the master plan will always be better than your idea of what the best possible outcome could be. It's the first time in my life, though, I've not had an answer to a question and been okay with it because I'm a perfectionist and I feel like I always have to have the answers or know how to find the answers. And I was just you know what? I don't know. And that's okay.
Maybe she's disidentifying with being a perfectionist in 2024.
I don't care, but I was thinking about how I do have these like homebody moments where I'm like, oh, it's so cozy. I love it here. I don't want to leave. And then I go out into the world and like have these cool experiences and I'm like, oh, I'm so energized by this. And I think part of it is like being an introverted extrovert, which the older I get, I think that that might be true of me. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think that it's also like, why does it have to be one or the other? Why do you have to be a homebody that, I just want to stay in? And if you have social anxiety, that's a totally different thing. And that's not something I'm trying to touch on. But why do you have to either be like a partier and like somebody who goes out all the time, somebody who like only wants to travel or do these things, and then you can only be a homebody? Like you live in sweats or you live in heels. Why can't you live in both?
We're literally multifaceted. So I think
Oh,
that
it's so
you can
limiting.
just, yeah, I don't think any of that is real.
No.
Like any identity. We are not all of these external identities and these labels and stuff. We can just create whatever we want to create because we are limitless beings. So
Yeah. But I think I've been thinking a lot about how in my life I've really felt kind of like a fish out of water because I've felt like a paradox. I don't know. It's just been like I've been blaming it on the fact that I'm a Gemini. I think I'm like, oh, well, it's because I'm two-sided. Like, I just am done like labeling it. I'm just embracing being a paradox and I'm not going to explain it anymore. And I'm just going to be okay with all the things that I care about or don't care about. And I think that that's a thing that I'm noticing more, like, especially as more of our lives are overexposed, especially with like celebrities. Like there's a lot of backpedaling and over explaining. Like I have to tell you why I do this thing so you don't come at me or cancel me about it or whatever. And I'm just done. Like just be who you are. And if people don't like it, they don't have to consume your life. They don't have to be there for it. Uh,
yeah, I've noticed too. I think when people do get upset about things like that, I really do think it comes from a place within themselves where they feel like they can't be that or they have an issue with whatever the topic is in their own brain space.
yeah.
So they come at somebody who is displaying that with, confidence or at least like leaning into it um as a, reaction. So I think that's been really helpful to me to know and to just be like, okay, this is not even actually about what I'm doing. This doesn't have any moral impact on, who I am as a person. This is more so about what this person's dealing with. So I think that's really helpful. And I think just leaning into the fact that we are so multifaceted, we are so limitless, we do not have to live into any of these identities or any of these boxes is so liberating. And I love it. And I feel like it's been a reclamation and a rediscovery over the past, several years at this point, like peeling away those layers and coming back to the center of who we are and just being that unapologetically, which is so funny because I feel like when our friendship began, that was so much of a core pillar, like that unapologetic, just being ourselves, being frumpy, being silly,
Yeah.
and like loving life, living life. And then you get all this like garbage piled on top of you. And now it's like cleaning that out and coming back to that centered place after all this time. So
Yeah.
every year that comes by, or every year that goes by, is coming back to that like true self, which I think is cool.
It is. It's so cool. And that's the definition of uniqueness, right? It's just taking all of these little facets of who you are and letting that be your identity, no matter how much they don't make sense together. Like this doesn't really drive with this, and just uniqueness in and of itself is all of the weird, wonderful things that make you you and not like anybody else. And I don't know, I think we try to compartmentalize and put ourselves into little baskets too much. And
Yeah, because who said,
okay.
you know?
Right. I'm just over it a little bit. And I also started, I think it just came up on my recommendations and I was like, this is interesting. I started listening to an audiobook. I just came across the audiobook on Audible. I love Audible. They should definitely sponsor us.
I love Audible too.
Love Audible.
I think it is one of the best tools in my toolbox of
Yeah.
life. And it
But I
has been since probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, I started just like it was like based on your listening. Here's a recommendation, whatever. It's this book. It's called The Courage to be Disliked. And
I just downloaded that,
shut up.
of course. I had a
Okay,
feeling that was going to happen.
we'll link it in the show notes. But it just so organically came up that we started talking about this. But it's called The Courage to be Disliked, the Japanese phenomenon that shows you how to change your life and achieve real happiness. And it's interesting because it basically is this like point of view of a skeptic who's trying to dismantle these theories of, his name's Alfred Adler. He is a psychologist who takes the concepts of philosophers like Freud and Socrates, whatever, and sort of like distilled them into his own philosophy. But he is by nature a psychologist, if I'm not mistaken, from like the 19th century. So this is a while ago. But there are these like 5 chunks of conversations with this person who's basically trying to like dismantle this theory. And it starts out, with all of these conversations about how he actually sees life really in like a childlike way. And it's a lot of the stuff that we talk about, like life is actually simple. People are actually more simple than we think, and people can change. And all of these things that we've been told throughout our entire lives aren't true. And so the skeptic is coming at him like, no, people don't change. Here's what I've seen in the world. Life is not simple. Here are all of the complexities that children can't understand. So how do you navigate that? And it really goes through like, they call it like mind decluttering, but that's literally what it is. Like all of these big giant things that feel so heavy, and just simplifying them and breaking them down and distilling them into something that's digestible. And so it is like introspective, but also like worldview altering as well. Like it brings you back to yourself, but it also does a lot of, okay, like now how do we take this and like project it onto what we see in the world, which I think is where some of the like more self-helpy books falter a little bit. It's a cool way to still think about the inner work and the introspection, which is important because you can't be good in the world if you're not good in yourself. But
Yeah.
also taking that like, okay, now how do we take these things and look at the world differently and experience
Yeah.
people differently and experience our own humanity differently. It was cool, but
That's exciting. I love that little peek into it. I literally just downloaded it,
so
so that
funny.
makes me want to dive into it very soon. But the title alone, I think, speaks volumes. And I think that is something that, we could all benefit from listening to, because even just the concept of the courage of being disliked is being brave enough to authentically be yourself in a world that supposedly could, come at you from so many different directions for, expressing your creativity or, speaking to something that is really important to you or whatever it is. And I think that it takes a lot of bravery to really step into yourself. But once you do it, like, I don't see any other way to live than besides like doing that and, being that true anchored version of yourself. So,
Yeah, it made me think about when we were talking to Sarah Lopes on here about people pleasing, or our whole people
yeah,
pleasing, like forever ago. We can link that episode too.
that's an oldie but goodie.
An oldie but a goodie, but it made me think about that. And then I started thinking about people pleasing, and like the whole like, are you or are you not a people pleaser conversation is a separate one. And we definitely get into it in that episode. But I was thinking about how nice it is to be liked. And
It's easier,
how
isn't it?
in my lifetime though, and in my not I don't want to say in my career specifically, but in definitely working at Disney, especially in the capacity I was in, and then also just recently like working in restaurants again and having sort of that like guest facing interaction all the time, like every few minutes different people all the time, and how good it feels at the end of the day when you feel like you made everyone happy and everyone liked you. And so I've been sitting with that a lot recently and being like, ooh, what does this say about me? And maybe I don't need to find a negative thing about all of it. Maybe it's okay to like, it really is okay to want to be liked, and I'm not criminalizing that or that feeling in myself because it is a good feeling. But sort of just like taking a step away from it, like, okay, why does this like fill me up so much?
Yeah, I feel like it's very interesting because I think that our ego gets really involved with wanting people to like us. So it's our ego gets really pleased when people do like us, and it gets really offended when people don't like us. And I think that I don't want to say trick to it, but almost like, I guess trick to it is like detaching either way. Like if people
Yeah.
like us, great. That's wonderful, but also if they don't like us, great, that's wonderful. Like, whatever it is, approach it so you can, still navigate forward and do what you need to do. And I'm not saying like come from a place of like a really bad place where you're like, where people don't like you. Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
come from like a nasty place, but I am
Or
saying like
yeah.
a detached place.
Yeah.
If you can genuinely say you're doing your best and giving your best and people like you or they don't, the outcome of that is irrelevant. And I also think like being so outcome dependent on all of it is what can like kind of make us falter. So detachment is actually kind of where we can be in our power, and we can use like it for good, or for, fueling ourselves and other people,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And not being apathetic about it. Like there's a difference between being
There's a big difference.
right,
Yeah. There's a
okay
line.
with someone not liking you, just like, okay, they don't like me. And even if you can't get to a place where it's like, great, that person doesn't like me, at least being like, okay, it is what it is. It is literally whatever. It's
Yeah. It
irrelevant.
doesn't determine like my morality or like who I
Yes.
am as a person.
Yes. But without also being apathetic where you're like, because then that still speaks to like the ego. That still speaks to a defense mechanism where you're trying to act and lie to yourself and tell yourself that it doesn't bother you when it does. Because I think when it happens to me and somebody doesn't like me, I make myself wrong about it. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
what did I do? Why don't they like me? Is there something wrong with me? And I think a lot of women specifically do this. And so it's a very empowering thing and probably scary to a lot of men when women get to a place where they're like, you don't like me? I don't care. I'm here
Detachment.
to do something that has nothing to do with you. So if you like me or not is irrelevant here. And that's kind of a goal of mine. Maybe these Zoom cutoffs are just preventing us from being too tangential.
It's probably good. Pattern interrupts.
Yeah, exactly. For those
I
who don't understand this weird pivot, Zoom, if you're listening, you really need to let us record for more than 40 minutes at a time because we got
Yeah.
cut off and then we came back on and Jess dropped a. Well, I'll let you. We were today years old when we learned the following.
Yeah, so in between the process of Zoom recording, I was scrolling on Twitter as one does, and someone posted the classic joke, why did the chicken cross the road? But there's a double meaning to it that I never knew. And the one meaning is obviously to get to the other side of the road, but the other meaning is, why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side, as in death, as in the other side, like getting hit by a car. So I'm really having a crisis right now because I'm 30 years old and I'm just realizing that that is another aspect of the joke. So if you are like me and have never noticed that before or realized that, you're welcome. Welcome to 2024. Now
Wow.
we know. So
Wow. I didn't know that either, so I don't think it's just you. I'm sure
yeah,
there are several people that are going to be like, wait, what?
it's kind of funny. I just never realized that. But yeah, so we're kicking off the year with realization. So
Of all kinds.
did you have any? So, okay, New Year's. I love New Year's, like you were saying, because I think it does have that really great fresh start energy. But I also think there's like this area where you have to be careful because I think it's really socially ingrained to like have New Year's resolutions, hit the ground running, start all these new habits and goals. And I don't necessarily resonate with that because like we are in the middle of winter, like the hibernating season, right?
Yeah.
So I think I do feel a bit polarized to like start going hard and hustling at it when, the days are super short and we're kind of, still in that slow time. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I think there is something beautiful about taking a moment to reflect in the new year. And I more so like to plant seeds at this time. It's more of like an inner reflection rather than a like action go-getter type mode. So, do you have any reflections or any New Year's like implementations that you were thinking of this year?
Yeah. I apologize a lot for everything. Women do this. I know we've talked about this on Rediscover before.
Yeah.
I noticed it a lot more once I started working like with people in a physical environment again. Like, oh, I'm apologizing for literally every tiny thing. Even if it's not my fault, it just happened, which is fine. And it shows empathy and you're like holding space for people and all of that, but like to a degree, right? And then at a certain point, it's like, am I actually taking ownership for all of these things? Even on, a minute level, it adds up. I don't know that these are like goals or big resolutions. These are like little things that I think if I can, chip away at them will make an impact on like who I am and how I show up in the world, which, as we know, has a ripple effect on literally everything else. But yeah, stopping apologizing so much. And I noticed it there a lot. And then Anthony will tell me all the time, like, stop apologizing. Don't you dare apologize. This isn't your fault.
I get the same feedback.
It's
So,
so interesting. I was listening to something recently about this too, and it makes the actual apologies less genuine because if you're apologizing for everything always, then when you actually have something you need to apologize for, it's not as potent because it's like the hearing, I love you all the time. Like if you don't find different ways to say it or show it, it can sort of like be like, yeah, I know, after a while. So it's
yeah,
something you have to work at as far as like being genuine and as far as authenticity goes. So that's a thing. Um, I think a big goal for this year for me and Anthony is to finally live in the same place.
woohoo.
That's a big one. We don't know how we're gonna do that yet, but we're like putting it out there. Just because everything like the time that we have spent in the same place has been like temporary and transient, and we're not together right now. And so, for the foreseeable future, it's going to be us being in separate places and just visiting each other when we can. But that's already old and it's getting older and more frustrating. And as you know, Jess, and anyone who's listening who's been in a long distance relationship, but at this point of our relationship and just like we're literally planning a wedding and we're like we don't even live in the same place yet, and I know that traditionally couples don't live together until after they're married, but that is so not how I function. And so it feels weird to me that like we're planning this wedding and we don't even live in the same place. So a big goal for this year is to get to the same place, whatever that
I
looks
think that will happen. And I'm very excited to see how it happens.
like.
I think it'll be better than you can imagine, but
So
I'm excited for that. I'm like, I think it'll be great.
we've had like these little like visualization moments that have been really sweet, but also really like frustrating because of course when you want something to happen and it's not happening fast enough, human beings get all antsy. Uh, but like at Christmas time especially, we were like, how great is it going to be when we can like host our family for Christmas. Like we don't have to put it on my mom. Like we can host and we can cook and we can have everyone to our place for Christmas. And how great is it going to be when like we're sitting around our Christmas tree, like watching Christmas movies and playing with our dog by our Christmas tree, like things like that, that we're just like slowly visualizing these moments. And
Yeah.
it feels so wistful because it's like, oh, that sounds so nice. And it's something that like I think a lot of people take for granted that are, in long-term relationships or marriages, and not calling them out for taking it for granted because it is like a normal thing. Like, yeah, it's your Christmas tree in your living room in your house that you live in with your partner. Like that's so normal. But for me, I'm like, that sounds like a dream.
Well, it's so funny because one day that is going to be so normalized for you. And I think that's the cool thing with like any sort of, manifestation of any dream is it can seem like such a far off, wistful, like beautiful dream right now. But in reality, if you feel so strongly about it, like your desires desire you, it's going to happen and it's going to feel normal.
Yeah.
And I
And
think the more like normalized we can feel about it in our like minds and in our consciousness now, like it's just you're gonna match that and it's gonna happen so soon.
yeah, and we'll appreciate it so much more. Like we'll
Yes.
be in such a, I think, prolonged state of gratitude when it does happen because of everything. And you know this from doing crazy
Yes.
long distance with Steven, like the moments that you get to be together in those little moments, the simple moments, the having coffee together at your own kitchen table and things like that feel so big and significant. And I really enjoy having that in life, like having a simple moment that I appreciate so much because it wasn't always so simple and so easy. Um, and that's how I kind of measure, like, not success, but kind of like life
Yeah.
success.
I
It's not,
literally said this the other
yeah,
day. Like, I made a YouTube video about New Year's resolutions and stuff. And I was like, I don't measure success by accomplishments. I measure it by like the beautiful moments and the simplicity and
yeah.
like how I feel on the day to day. Like, I don't care about accomplishments. I care about how my day is going and how my life is feeling, from the inside.
And the more time that passes, the more I am adamant about that, and the less that I care how societally abnormal that is. I just simply don't care. I simply don't care about all of these milestones of monetary success. And that's not to say that I don't care about, making enough money to build the life that I want, or you doing the same to build the life that you want. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it just doesn't get me out of bed in the morning. This morning I had such a great morning, but it was so simple, and it was literally just like I got up and I like felt good and energized, so I did this workout that was like more intense than I would normally do, but it felt really good. And then like the sun was shining and it's a little cool outside, but I've been in like actual winter for so long right now that like this feels so good. So I like took my coffee outside and I like sat down and I had like a little 10-minute meditation. It just was such a simple morning, but it felt so good. Getting to a place where like I can do that in the morning, even if everything else in my life isn't perfect right now, was so great, and I'm so grateful for it. And I'm like, this is success. Like being able to have a morning like this is rich. I feel like a rich woman today. It feels so luxurious, and it literally cost me nothing. So it's just interesting, and I think I'm really just like leaning into that because I can't change the things that are uncertain right now, but I can bask in the moments that I didn't think were ever going to happen to me. I don't know that that's a resolution so much as a realization, but I think they go hand in hand because you can't resolve to do something unless you realize that you've not been doing it. So, yeah, I really like the new year a lot, and especially as I get older, I mean January is kind of like a blah month, like you said. It's like days are short, it's cold, like you're supposed to be hibernating. But I think it's like inwardly energizing. Like I might not physically be like, I'm gonna go run a 10K because I never want to do that ever, no matter what month of the year it is. But it is inwardly energizing because it's exciting to have, like I said, a clean slate and like a fresh start. I don't know. It feels like the morning all the time in January.
Yeah, I
Anything's
know.
possible.
And I know it's just a day, it's just a number. It's literally time's not real, but it is kind of cool to bookmark these life experiences year by year and see how far we've come. And I think 2023 was such a year of, I think, a lot of internal growth. Like I keep saying, it felt like a slow burn growth, like underneath the surface, no quantum leaps, no like huge life transformations, but just this like unraveling of stuff and
Mhm.
like coming back to my core and continuing to do that in the new year. And I love your description about your morning that you had today because I think that is like two people could have had that same morning. They could have your experience that you just described, or they could have an experience of rushing through it, feeling in lack of like, oh my gosh, I'm not where I want to be in my life at all, and not like being presenced with it. And it's so easy to have both experiences in that same exact set of circumstances. So, and it's funny because the only shift that is made is the perspective and like the way that you look
Yeah.
at it. So,
Yeah.
I think that is one of my biggest resolutions for the new year and just life in general is to be present in the now and here in being here to just know like I am fully taken care of in this moment. Everything in this moment is supporting me and I am safe and I'm here and I'm okay and I can just enjoy this right now. Like I don't have to solve my life's problems in this now moment. I can plant seeds, I can take an action, but I can't like control things that are out of my control right now. So why not just really relish in this moment because it's gonna change. Like everything changes so quickly and so like out of our grasp. So why not just enjoy where we're at right now? And it's something that I just could not get a grasp on in my younger years. And as I go through more of life, I realize like that's where the living is. And if I'm not living in that and I'm waiting for some far off thing and some far off success that is inevitably going to make me crave another success, like I'm not ever going to actually live my life and it's just going to pass me by. So big realizations
Yeah.
and I don't know, just practicing being centered and present in the new year is all I could ever want. And it's a daily practice.
It's so funny because I think at the beginning of 2023, I wanted that was like a goal for the year. And I really feel like I've gotten so much better at it, but I've gotten better at it because of everything that 2023 brought my way, and both good and bad, because I had some really high moments and some really low moments. And I felt like at the end of the year, I looked back and I was like, you know what? I think I handled that pretty well. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
perfect, and I definitely, had moments of doubt or moments of fear or moments of frustration for sure. And if we got Anthony in here, he'd be like, "Yep, oh yeah, that happened." But I mean, I wanted to be more present in my life, and then I lost my job. And I had time. And I was like, okay, how can I fill this time with all the things I used to complain about not having time for? Just embracing the detour. Yeah, I think the reason that like I weathered it and got through it was like a support system, awesome, top-notch people. But also that I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like enjoy this. And then it led to like, a little temporary job situation that ended up being so much fun and so gratifying. And when I had my last day, I cried. I was like, wait, I love this. I don't want to leave. And it's so great. And I was driving home and I was like, you know what? How cool is it that like this crazy detour happened and I lost my job and that was awful. And then this thing happened that I'm so sad to leave and say goodbye to. Like I get to be so sad to say goodbye to this thing that I literally cried about it. And it doesn't change the fact that it's sad and I'll miss those people, but it's such a gift to be sad about leaving something. So even that perspective shift has been huge. Like getting to be sad to leave Anthony to be apart. That's so incredible, and that's something I definitely wanted at one point in my life, and now I have it, and it's sad to say goodbye, but it's also so it's so joyful to have something that's sad to say goodbye to. So
Yeah. I think it's so interesting too. Like we can set these intentions, but it doesn't necessarily mean like something good or something bad is going to come from them. I think like that life unfolds situations that gets us to exercise the muscle of like the intention that we set. So it's like, okay, I want to be present. So it's going to give us a variety of different situations. And like we're the only ones who label them as good and bad. Like we give them meaning. But life is like, okay, I'm going to exercise this muscle that you want to exercise right now.
yeah,
And it's kind of cool how, we get given these opportunities. And depending on how we look at them, again, everything's perspective. Like that can either be a really terrible and difficult situation or it can be a beautiful situation. And I think what you just described is like, oh, this is such a gift, and this taught me so much. And when we can look back on things and reflect and know, like, whatever situations that were given to us, you know, were given to us for this lesson or this, experience, like that, it all kind of adds up. And it does, it's funny how subconsciously we end up contributing to these intentions that we set, even if we kind of like forget about them over time.
Yeah. And even just like embracing the imperfection of the circumstances, I think is a big
Yeah.
part of that. Like when Anthony and I got engaged, I remember like that day having this thought, like after it happened. I think I even told him, I don't have a job right now. And like we're living in two different places. And like I was trying to find all the reasons why like the circumstances weren't perfect for this thing to happen. And in his brain, he was like, so what? I want to be with you forever. So I asked you to marry me. Like it's as simple as that in his mind. And so that was really like a wake up call for me. Like, oh, it doesn't actually matter if everything is perfect right now. What matters is that he's like, I don't care if everything is perfect ever. I just want to be with you in the imperfection of it all. So this is me saying like, okay, yeah, things are weird right now. We don't live in the same place. You don't have a job, but like I want to be with you forever. So that's outside of this. Like that's separate from all of this. I don't want to be with you forever because of your job or because of where we live or because of anything else. It's just like whatever comes, I want to be with you forever.
Isn't
And
it silly how or how much value we place on like these external circumstances? Like, and they're not even like they don't define us, they're not even real.
yeah,
And they can change at any time.
yeah. I just can't spend too much time in it. Like the wallowing thing just brings me to a place where I don't recognize myself. And so I simply cannot do it. And so in maybe this is a bad way to go about it, but in my like perpetual avoidance of the wallowing, I have actually found like a better perspective on all of it.
It's actually so funny that you phrase it like that. So many synchronicities in this episode, but me and Stephen had this exact conversation on like either the days leading up to or on New Year's. I told him, I was like, I feel like this year should have like, it has a weird feeling to it because I feel like I should say like it was a difficult year, but I actually like really loved this year. Like there was so much
Yeah.
good to it. And he's like, yeah, because your ego thinks that it should have been a bad year because XYZ happened and these difficult things happened, but you can still find this like glimmer of opportunity and like lessons that you learned. And you can look at the from this perspective that's different. And I'm like, oh my God. So we're basically like conditioned to hook on to these really difficult circumstances and label it as something bad. But like the reality is there were so many things that were so beautiful about it. And again, I really like to look at everything like there is this like inherent neutrality to it. So it's really about like what you take from the situation rather than like becoming a victim to it. Which is something I've really had to learn over the years because I used to really like lean into that narrative of like, oh, this year sucked. And like, of course, if you lose someone close to you or something like really like horrific happens, I get that. But I also feel like even in those situations, like there's something to take away from it. Um, to some extent, So I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like the more that time goes on, the more that I am learning like life is actually a lot more simple than we're sold
Yeah.
that it is.
Right. Everything doesn't have to be so hard.
I
And
know, like I don't want to live a hard life
no.
all the time. Like I don't want to live in this place of like dread and wallow and sorrow. Like why?
Yeah.
And like that's the crazy thing is like you don't have to. And I know it might feel counterintuitive and it might feel like, oh, you're being a blind optimist, but like you don't have to live in that space. And like you get to choose it ultimately.
Whatever you believe. For me as a Christian, and I honestly think I don't see a lot of Christians embracing this. It's all going to work out. It's already been figured out. You don't have to do anything. You just get to participate because God decided that he wanted you to participate in this story, so you get to, but he doesn't need you to do anything. Like he's got it. that's kind of like the end has already been written, so you're just filling in the chapters. It's so interesting because I have also, by other Christians, been called like, oh, you're so naive. Oh, you just want to bury your head in the sand. In the scope of the universe, this tiny little thing just doesn't matter at all. And we give so much weight to these things and we make them so integral and so important, and they really don't matter.
I feel like whenever I go into nature and I see something so beyond my mental comprehension,
Yeah.
and it's all natural, and it's like a flowing waterfall, or it's a canyon, or it's a mountain, or something that's just like so much bigger than you could ever comprehend. I'm just like, okay, I'm grounded in this moment right now. And like, there is so much of this earth that has space like this. Like, I'm in one little speck of this, and there's like millions and billions of like different natural landmarks on this one planet alone. And then it just makes you zoom out to like, okay, I'm currently in, you know, currently I'm in like Finland right now, okay? And so I'm in Europe. So I'm in planet Earth. So I'm in the universe and the Milky Way galaxy and like this endless universe, and like zooming out, and it's like, oh my God, like
You
my little
can't see
brain,
you
my
anymore.
yeah, my little perception is so tiny. And I can just be here and just know that I'm here to experience something, and I'm going along my day, and I get to, again, I get to play. I get to be this like character. Like you can literally think of yourself as like living in The Sims, or just like living this little like this little game that you play. And
Yeah, it's
it's
a
funny. It's
simulation.
like it's all a simulation. Like, like money is a currency, and your home is like your little shelter that you create, and like all these little things. And it's like it's just it's so small, and there's so much abundance around us in so many ways, and it's crazy to think about. So
Yeah,
I don't
feeling
know when
small in a good way.
yeah, like that's how I feel when I see like these ancient buildings that have such meticulous detail, or these ocean waves that just come in endlessly. And when you leave, you know that they're just going to continue like coming up to shore. And there's more grains of sand on the beach that you could ever count, or leaves on the trees. Like, I actually love the feeling of being so small,
Yeah.
because I'm like, okay, whatever's going on in my brain is just a program in this machine in my head that's on loop because of what I've been exposed to or taught or
Mhm.
indoctrinated into. And it's just not real.
Yeah,
And
and
I
it
can
feels like
change
it's
it at, yeah, and I can change it at any time. It's just really liberating. So,
no, it's very freeing. I know we've talked about this before, but these things that are already figured out, and I'm over here worrying about this little problem as if it's not also already figured out, seeking the opportunity to find the perspective and then getting there is a very freeing thing. And
yeah.
people will call you naive, but it's okay because,
But again, it comes back to that whole concept of like courage to be disliked, or like
yeah.
the knowingness that like people are constantly projecting their own inner world
Right.
onto anything that triggers it. And if you're triggering it, oftentimes you're probably just shining a little too bright for them to handle. And that's okay. So,
And I think there is a real thing where people like want to hate happy people.
well, because misery loves company, right?
Yeah.
You know, it would be interesting if we re-recorded that happiness episode that we recorded a few years ago. I wonder what our perspectives would be on that now.
Yeah, I want to go back and listen to it because I don't even really remember like everything that we said.
Me neither, but I know, and I feel like now, at least in a summary, like I feel like happiness is just, it's not like constant state. Like it's a feeling that comes and goes, and it's cultivated, but
For me,
it's just not like a realistic, like I think everyone's like, oh, I want to be happy, and they think it's like an external
yeah,
finding, but it's really like it comes from an internal space of contentment.
yeah. And for me, that comes from like shifting my focus.
Yeah.
Like,
Perspective.
right, but like, okay, I'm unhappy about this thing that I can't, like you said, like I can't solve it right now. I'm going to shift my focus to something that I can solve or something that makes me happy, or something that's going to bring me peace. Like if I can't fix this thing right now, if I can't figure it all out in this moment, if I can't undo a thing that's been done, then I'm just going to shift my focus because it's not going to go anywhere. I can come back to it if I need to later. I'll probably find out when the right time to do that is. Take a walk about it. Like that's another thing that I'm like definitely going to get into this year. It's like if you can't fix it, get up, move, take a walk about it.
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to the mailbox and back, whatever. Take a walk about it.
Well, because there's like 2 million things that your senses could pick up on it at one time, right? Like there's so many things just in our immediate vicinity right now, like whether you're in your living room or you're out for a walk or you're driving or whatever, there's so much that our senses could pick up on. So like the consciousness that you have, if you can like redirect your focus for a moment, sometimes that gives you like the reset or the refresh that you need to just kind of have a little pattern interrupt
Mhm.
and like stop the loop and refocus onto
Yeah.
something a little bit
Yeah, and I
more
think
so that you want to focus on.
whenever I'm like in my head about something, I just need to move.
Yeah, and along those lines, my other resolution for this year too is like actually regulating my nervous system and working on any sort of like internal like anxiety or any like um what's the word I'm trying to think of? Any residual like health anxiety that I've still had from my whole journey, things like that. So, um yeah, it's interesting that you say like taking a walk helps so much because it does, because it's more of like a somatic type experience, like getting into the body and actually, moving. Because I think we intellectualize so much, like we live in our minds. Um, because that's just like what we're told like you're supposed to do. Like I think even like regular talk therapy and regular modalities is like to go into your mind and understand why you're doing things or how to do things or like figuring it out logically when like the reality is like so much of our stress or traumas or just like feelings get trapped like inside of our bodies. So like being more in that um like within your body and like doing movements and exercises to work through that
Yeah.
instead of just like figuring it out and being logical with it is my intention for the year. Like I just genuinely want to feel calmer and more
Yeah.
relaxed and be able to work through things and handle things instead of shutting down
Yeah.
like I have in the past. So
Yeah.
that's going to be a really interesting, but I think in a weird way, like kind of fun to kind of test myself and see what kind of progress I can make with that over the year
And I was
and
thinking
beyond.
about it in the terms of like being a kid, because I saw this meme the other day. It was like, can you believe school started at 7 a.m. and I actually went? And I'm like,
Right.
we like did a lot. And I
I,
never felt like, I mean, I don't want to say I never felt tired or depleted because I definitely did. And then I realized, well, I would go to school and then I would go to dance after school and move my body for 2 hours and then come home and eat dinner and do my homework and not feel like I was falling asleep. Like I felt like I had enough energy to come home and eat dinner and do my homework. And I think it's because like you're sitting in school all day, like sitting and learning and intaking, and that's a lot of stuff going on in your brain. And then I would go like essentially work out for 2 hours after school and then get home and have this like renewed energy. And I was able to focus and I was able to like get those things done. And I'm like, there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said for like, okay, I've like done all the brain things. I need to get out of my head now and into my body. And then I will feel refreshed and recharged and able to get back into my brain again. So I kind of thought about it like in that way and like in the vein of, being more childlike and simplifying life. Like maybe it's just that we need to go run around and burn off some steam. Maybe that's not just for kids, like tiring your kid out on the playground. Maybe we need to go to the playground and tire ourselves out a little bit because
yeah.
you feel so tired all the time. Like I know you feel tired all the time. I definitely feel tired all the time. And then I go move my body and I'm like, oh, I wasn't tired. I was just stagnant. And those are two different things. So I remember like the days that working from home, like at the end of my day, I would like go take a walk before the sun went down, like a long walk. I would feel good. And then I would have
Mhm.
like the energy to do the evening as opposed to like closing my laptop and just going and like sitting on my couch. You know what I mean? Maybe we need to like do an extracurricular activity. Like, why are these just for kids? It's just good for you in general, but I was listening to Liz Moody's like 2024 podcast. She was talking about like if your goal in 2024 is to lose weight or to get fit or whatever, but instead like you reframe that goal instead of being like I need to lose 10 pounds, you just say like I'm going to move my body every day for this amount of time or I'm going to like get outside and do this thing every day for this amount of time. It becomes much easier to achieve that goal because it's just like a thing you're adding to your life and you're not thinking about it with like oh my gosh, I have to do this. If I don't do this, then XYZ. You're just thinking, like, oh, this will make me feel better all around. And then maybe I'll also lose 10 pounds. But even if I don't,
Yeah.
I'm still going to feel better. I'm still going to have more energy. I'm still going to show up in the world in a more positive way. And so, like, all of those things will affect something even better than losing 10 pounds, even if I don't end up losing 10 pounds. I'm definitely going to be healthier. My body is going to feel better overall. Just things like that. Just like reframing the goal from something like, oh, I've got to get better at this. I've got to lose this. I've got to like figure this out. Like, what if I just start adding things and then see what happens?
Yeah, I really like that point that she makes in that podcast, because it kind of gets you out of that outcome-based
Yeah.
reality and that like dependency on the outcome for you to feel like you accomplished a goal. Because I feel like, well, because I think we all, I don't want to say we all, but I know that I definitely had that phase in like middle of life, like high school years, early college years, where it was like, oh, I want to lose like X amount of pounds. I want to like stick to this diet. I want to eat healthy. I want to work out every day. And I would never freaking do it.
Yeah.
I would never do it. And it felt like I was just constantly breaking a promise to myself, whereas in my like present day, I'm like, I'll set all these goals and I won't do them and I'll feel so bad about myself. And it's just like, I can't live like that anymore. I can't like constantly be trying to fix myself and live in this fix it mentality. Like, I think that really contributed to, all this the snowball of health effects because it was like, okay, well, next week I'm going to start this new protocol and I'm going to be so diligent about it and I'm going to not eat these foods and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it genuinely whacked me out like so much so where I was in this constant like chronic fight or flight mode all the time and freeze mode too. I think I realized like I would get to a point where I was just so overwhelmed and overstimulated that I would just freeze and not do anything. And I've spent a lot of the last few years in that state because it was just it was too overwhelming. And I'll notice now when I start to get into that. And I think that something like, I think doing some sort of movement is really helpful and not the high intensity movement. Cause for me, that doesn't help. And I
Hmm.
know for a lot of people, especially if you've had any sort of like, if you have had PCOS or if you've had like a chronic type of health thing,
Yeah.
that I know more people have than I ever realized until I actually started dealing with it. But the lower intensity workouts actually help me more. And not even workouts, but actually like, I don't know if you've done these, Kristen, but like actual somatic exercises where it's like different, like rocking of like your hips
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
neck or whatever.
Yeah.
Got like this little like 30-day somatic, like it's just like little videos to follow. And honestly, like because I would get really burned out at the end of like a work day or whatever. And I would do that and I would fall asleep so easily. And I'm like, oh, this is so
Yeah.
simple. And I'm just like tending to my body, nurturing it, doing like these little rocking motions, opening up my hips, opening up,
Hmm.
different joints in my body. And I would feel so relaxed. I'm like, oh, I was holding a lot of tension here. And this is actually so simple. It doesn't hurt. It's very gentle and it calms me down like crazy.
Yeah.
So somatics are in for 2024.
Yeah. I will generally, I think like my version of that, like in the last probably like year or two, honestly. I think I've been doing this for a while, like unconsciously, because it's not a thing I do every day. So I forget that it's like also kind of a routine. I think that's also something like a routine doesn't have to be something you do every day. It just has to be something you do consistently. So
Yeah.
if I have a day specifically where it's like getting to be bedtime and I feel restless, I will pick like 4 to 5 different yoga poses and I will just like get into them. Like I will just go into a child's pose and just like be there and like breathe for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long I want to be there. I just hang out. I'll do some cat cows. Those are like amazing. And those help Anthony a lot too because he has so much tension in his body from his job being so physical. Even if I don't feel like I need it, I'll do it with him and I'll be like, oh, I feel so much better now. Like you don't know how much tension you hold in your body until you release it, but you have to like move to release it. So I think just like moving more because I feel so much better when I do it. And she was talking about that too. Liz Moody was talking about like the reason like people don't stick to their like fitness goals is because they're making them too unattainable. Like
Mm-hmm.
goals
You do it
shouldn't
one day and then you're like, oh, I don't want to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. And then you never do.
well, like your goal shouldn't be like, I'm going to get up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym that's 20 minutes away from where I live. Like, you're not going to do that every day. But what you might do every day is like work out in your living room. So, and it's funny because she mentioned this and I do this too. She'll like pick out her workout the night before. If I'm doing a YouTube one, I will click on the video and like let it play for a few seconds so it shows up in my history. So that way, like, I'll turn off the TV and turn it on in the morning, and the first video in my history is that video right at the start, and I'll just click on it and go. She'll like set out her workout clothes the night before. I think that's a good thing too, because then you literally can like get out of bed, put on those clothes, and turn on the TV, and you're ready to go. Like having the equipment you're going to use or need for that workout. We do this already. You know, we meal prep, we prep for
Your outfit.
dating. We prep for all these different things in our lives, but we don't really like prep for moving our bodies. But if it is going to be a routine, you have to make it as easy as possible for yourself. And so I was like, okay, I feel like validated because I do that and it works because I will work
Yeah.
out every single morning, even if it's just 15 minutes. I will do it and I will feel better. However much time I have in the morning, I will find a way to like cram something in there. And there are so many like free things you can find on YouTube and everywhere.
It makes a big difference too when you're, at least for me, to not be working out for, again, an outcome. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think in the past few years at least, I shifted away from like ever trying to achieve some sort of goal, like getting to a certain weight. And I
Yeah.
know that was like something that I struggled with a lot, like in my early 20s and
Same.
even in high school too. Like shifting away from that and just like doing workouts because of how I feel and like feeling better. Like
Yeah.
if that is my why, if my why is to feel better in my body, like to cultivate health, to cultivate more wellness, and to, like have a routine that is fulfilling for me, that keeps me more motivated than like trying to lose weight, like trying to change something and
Right.
some outcome that is like so out of my control because my body's going to do what it does. And like you hear all of these stories about like if people have unbalanced hormones and they don't lose weight because of some reason, or, you know, you want to, like, you don't want to restrict food because you're either going to an event or like doing something, or you just want to enjoy yourself. Like, I don't know, just dismantling all of that and actually
Yeah.
shifting the focus and the why behind all of this was really life changing for me. And I think it just took off a lot of pressure that had been held over my head. That was, I don't know if that was self implemented or societally implemented or wherever the heck I got that from.
Probably
But
is.
yeah, it's just freeing. And now it's like, I like to move because it makes me feel better. I guess that's the whole
Yeah.
point of it all
And just
and shifting
literally
that.
like making it so simple that it's like the same as like making your bed in the morning. Again, yeah, shifting away from like this is the outcome I want to just like I'm going to do this for 15 minutes because everyone has 15 minutes and it feels good and it's just part of my morning.
I love that we're in this era now of like dismantling all of these New Year's like
Yeah.
cliches. I think it's really cool. I think we've started to like personalize them to our own selves and actually implementing them and actually making them practical and not hitting the ground running so hard that it burns you out.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you think about that concept of like stripping away all of the garbage and coming back to your true self, I feel like that's what we're doing here with any sort of New Year's quote unquote resolutions. I like to say New Year's intentions, but I think coming back to the core of like coming back to your true self and implementing these intentions to come back to that is so empowering, and not making them complicated, really leaning into simplicity and just overall trying to make your life feel better instead of contorting yourself into something that's just like upholding some expectation of an outcome. So,
Yeah. And I think social
no.
media does that a lot too. Like, girl, I love seeing your 13-step morning routine on TikTok. I sure do. It looks so beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, but it also looks so unrealistic. And I'm not gonna do that. So what
And
is
it might work for that person, but it
yeah,
might not, it's not going to work for everybody. And I think that's where we have to like have the own self-awareness to be like, okay, we need to do what's right for us. And if it's 3 steps, if it's 13 steps, whatever makes you feel good from the inside is what you want to focus
but I
on.
think the biggest thing is not feeling like you're not doing something right because you're not doing it that way. Like, oh, is this why
Yeah.
her skin is amazing? It's just not realistic for everyone, financially, time-wise. Like, if you've got like a 2-year-old, you're not doing that. All of those things factor in, and not making it again, like not making it wrong that you're not doing it that way. Like, if you're getting up in the morning and washing your face and slapping on some moisturizer or some SPF, like, great, good on you, girl. You got it. Whatever. But I think a lot of my, for lack of a better word, like my fuck it journey has been like unfollowing and like deleting a lot of these things. And not because they're like triggering necessarily, but because like I don't need it. The less that I'm like consuming, the better I'm feeling. So I've done like a lot of unfollowing. I deleted TikTok completely. I unfollowed like 300 people on Instagram, and a lot of them were like the health wellness people, because as much as I like learned so much from them, having too much of that content was making me anxious. Like you were saying, like that constant fight or flight, like because you're just constantly consuming, like, here's how to make this better. Here's this thing you didn't know about this product. Here's how this thing might actually be hurting you in the long run. And I'm like, it's too fucking much. Like I can't possibly like distill all the information and then implement all the things. I can only do so much. And it's just making me more stressed than it's helping me. And if these things that are well intentioned and are supposed to help you and are supposed to be like protective or preventative or whatever are actually causing you more anxiety and more stress and making you feel worse, then it's not effective for you. And so it might be good for some people to like fill their feed with that. But as someone who experiences health anxiety and like health related anxiety, I just personally cannot do it. And it's something that I've traced back to childhood, because it's definitely something my sister and I are going through at the same time. And I know we've both talked to you about it too a bit, but like
Yeah.
my mom is a nurse. And so growing up, we heard like the worst case scenario stories about everything, from like motorcycle accidents to like people getting hepatitis from tattoos. It was a spectrum, because
Right.
she in her line of work saw the worst case scenario of something going wrong. And so it was a lot of like trying to protect us by giving us the information. And over time, I've realized like the flip side of that was it made us fearful of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Kind of like setting some boundaries there, like, hey, mom, like, I know that you mean well, but I don't need to hear about this right now. Or this
Yeah,
is
it's
painful right
it's kind of just the catastrophizing, like
now.
whether it comes from like a medical space or like from the news stories or like someone down the road died from this
Yeah.
horrible accident. Like
Yeah.
it really does kind of get into like even just like talking about that, like I felt something in my chest, like it kind of gets into your
Yeah.
subconscious or your nervous system or whatever it is, and it like has this little reflex. So yeah, that's really, really big for me to start untangling. Like, I just want to feel like I can handle these situations instead of getting set off
Yeah.
by them. And
Yeah.
not necessarily like, because I think I always had this misconception, like, I want anxiety to go away. But it's like, okay, it's not necessarily going to go away, but like, if it's there, can I handle it?
Right.
If it's there, can it be like more so in the background and I can be in the driver's seat?
Mhm.
And taking control and just letting it kind of drift off and know it doesn't really have as big of a space as it did before. And that's, kind of where I'm focusing now. And it's exciting. It's like the hardest but best work that you can do on yourself because it really changes the game. Because I think if you can work on that, like doing that inner work,
Mm.
it reflects outwards more so than anything else you can do, like any other energy you put into like a tangible project or something. Because that kind of stuff going inwards and like shifting from the inside reflects outwards to anything that you do. So
Yeah.
I don't know, big realizations on that
Yeah.
front.
Yeah. It's definitely been big because to realize that the things that are meant to help you might actually be hurting you and not criminalizing them, but just removing them, just like putting up that boundary, whether it's like social media wise or in personal relationships. For me, it's been both, but it's been really helpful.
What's that thing? I think Liz Moody says this too. Speaking of her, she's like, and this is more so relating to like big topics, but it can be on a smaller scale too. It's like you suffering more is not going to like diminish the suffering of somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's like for me, as someone who took on a lot of that energy, if whether you wanted to call that like an empath or whatever, like me taking on that suffering over and over and over and over again, like to the point of a load where I cannot even carry, is not going to help alleviate the suffering of anybody else out there. So again, learning to manage that and not hold it so close to your chest.
Yeah. I think realistically, like we can only handle and control what we can, and everything else is actually diminishing our ability to be effective and to quote our high school's slogan, to be an instrument of positive change.
Oh my God, I forgot
Oh,
about
I
that.
think about that all the time. I'm like, I can't be an instrument of positive change if I'm so bogged down by all of this negativity, by all of this fear mongering that I feel buried. I can only intake what I can intake. And so I'm just going to focus on the things that light me up and fire me up, and everything else has to stay over here.
It's funny because we are like, I really believe we are like limitless spiritual beings, but at the same time, we are human. So we can
Mhm.
only be what we can be. Like, we can't be everything all of the time.
Yeah.
So it's that interesting paradox of like knowing, when you are living this human experience, like you can't be everything. That's why everyone has different talents and different interests and different desires. Like, everything's covered. It's just not going to be covered by everyone all of the time.
And we're limitless in our capacity for like goodness. We're limitless in our capacity to love and receive love, but we're not limitless in our capacity to hold on to negativity and anger and hate and all of those things that are not like of the highest self, because the highest self is the limitless piece. That I very much feel I have a threshold for, and I'm really trying to be like, I don't have the capacity for this right now. I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna take it out of my field of view. And a lot of that has been like controlling what I consume on social media. And I know we've talked about this forever and ever, but a lot of the things that I once thought were helpful to me are now in excess. Like I still follow certain health accounts. Obviously, I still listen to Liz Moody and things like that. Like I still want to better my physical health and my mental health and all of those things. And so I'm going to consume in moderation. I'm going to refine what I consume and how and when I consume it. So that way it actually is helpful and effective and not just like piling on thing after thing that I'm supposed to be doing and I'm not. So then I end up feeling inadequate or like, am I doing enough?
Yeah, well, because we're always going to grow and change, and we're always going to operate at like a different vibrational frequency. So if the people who you're following match that, like, of course, you're still going to resonate with them. But if they don't match that anymore, you have full permission to unfollow them, to separate yourself. And I think that's another really big word for this year and for life is just conscious consuming or conscious relationships or conscious parenting or conscious spending, whatever it is, like having more intentional consciousness with whatever you do
Yeah.
can totally make or break a situation. Because I think the only times we really get into trouble is when we are unconscious about whatever we're doing.
Yeah. Being vigilant is like the way I see it. Like to me, being vigilant is like a step above being aware.
but
but
not hyper vigilant because you don't want to
it's
get
not like hyper
too
vigilant
intense.
or like alert. Yeah, not passively scrolling on social media and just because you internalize that stuff, whether you're like conscious of what you're seeing or not.
And do you know how many limiting beliefs are in those comment sections?
Oh my
It
gosh.
is rampant.
Yeah.
And I made my ins and out list of 2024 on TikTok. And one of my points was like to stop reading random people's comment sections, which I admittedly haven't been doing a good job with. But you can just kind of tell like if somebody says something that's like slightly like controversial or they share something really positive too, like that's a really interesting one. If you go into the comments, people will be like, oh, I wish I could do that. Oh, I can't do that because of this. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Like it all like it just spews out. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm just reading this for like my entertainment
Yeah.
and just my passive like scrolling when I could be doing anything else. And I get it. Like, people sometimes need to scream into the void, but I don't know. It gets a little messy. And I just again, it's not conscious intentional use of social media. It's like, here's all my garbage I'm gonna spew in your comment section. And then random people are reading that. It's just interesting. It's something to just pay attention to.
Yeah, so I've just basically like eliminated all opportunities for being mindless, and I'm going to be mindful about screen time.
Well, I think this has been a very good New Year's pep talk. I think we are set up, for whatever path 2024 has for us. I don't know. The vibe of 2024 is pretty cute. I'm excited
I like
about
it
it.
so far. I like
I
it.
like it. Somebody posted, actually, this was a TikTok that was going around. Someone was like, 2024 has the same energy as summer 2016. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know why, but like, yeah,
Okay.
let's
I love
go.
that. Summer
I know.
2016 was a lot of fun for me, so I'm
Me too. I actually had a really great summer that year. So
yeah.
it was actually a very like pivotal time of my
Me
life.
too.
So yeah, maybe that was just like some sort of collective experience, but
Even
I'll take it.
like the ins and outs trend, I've sort of liked reading some of those, like wedding ins and outs 2024. And all the ins were like unposed photos, not a real wedding cake, all that stuff. And then it was like out, matching dresses, superposed photos, tall, ridiculous wedding cakes, like all of those things. And whether you're into those things or not is your prerogative. But for me, overarchingly, I saw it as like we're embracing the natural, the real, the
Yeah.
sort of just candidness, the genuine authenticity of this thing, and we're not buttoning it up as much. We're not making it as like grandiose or as like performative. And I think like with anything in life, I really took that as like, okay, this is what's in this year, authenticity and embracing the blur. And if this is the vibe, then I'm into this vibe.
Yeah, I think that with trends like that, people get like super over it, but I actually loved that trend. I thought
Yeah.
it was really telling of like each individual person, and obviously like it can relate to like bigger scheme things like weddings or whatever it is. But it was such a good introspective exercise to be like, oh, okay. And actually, it kind of reminded me of when my old roommate Chris and I did like the full moon parties, and we would write like what we're bringing into this next season and what we were releasing.
Yeah.
So it's actually really therapeutic. So I loved that trend. I loved that energy of 2024. I know, I kind of think that people are kind of getting over the whole like picture perfect, like posed, this is a show type vibe, and more so leaning into the authenticity route and just being and embracing our humanness and whether that be on social media or just like in real life too. So it's pretty cool. I think it'll be a fun year. I really don't know like how it's gonna unfold fully, but I'm here for the experience and the
Oh yeah.
adventure. Like
I don't have anything
I'm
past January.
I'm done with the planning. I'm here for the experience. So
Yeah.
that's that.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I want to give the disclaimer that like we really don't talk about what we're gonna talk about. Like we briefly tried to be like, what should we talk about? And then we were just like, I don't know. So,
I feel like this episode, I feel like we got into like a channeling type state. Like the stuff that was coming through in this conversation was just, it was great. Like I feel like it's like fresh start energy,
yeah.
really I don't know. I feel inspired by this conversation. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this as much as we have because it's a good kickoff. It's like your New Year's pep talk of the
Yeah.
year.
Yeah. And I think like we all needed that, myself included. It's cool to feel like even though all the other circumstances of our lives are different, like some things are so parallel. And I felt that a lot in this one. And so it makes me feel close to you, even though we're far away.
I know.
But
I know. I always forget to like no matter where we travel, it's so crazy how connected I still feel to anybody that I talk to like consistently. Like I feel like we're just sitting in the same room right now, even though we're very much in polar opposite
I was going to
destinations.
say,
So
we are currently in very polar opposite places, climates, all of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
This one's really great. I feel really good. I feel really energized. I'm excited to like that I get to edit this one and like listen back to it because it's gonna be like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
like
I think I want to give this one a listen like before January ends because I think it's just a good foot to start the year off on. So,
yeah.
yeah, well, here we go.
Yeah.
2024. We're kicking it off.
Wow.
Kristen's in Orlando. I'm currently in Finland, and that's that.
Jess is in the Arctic Circle and I'm in the tropics. Although
Yeah.
it was chillier today, but it was one of those like good Florida January days where it was like so sunny and cooler, but just so sunny. And it made me, I think that's part of the reason I'm in such a good mood today because the sun has just been like out all day.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I don't know how you survive up here because we've got about 2 to 4 hours of daylight, but
Seriously?
yeah. The
Wait.
sun doesn't rise until about 9:30 or 10, and then it's around 2 or 3. So it's really fun.
Oh, I would be mainlining vitamin D.
Oh
I
yeah,
I
I
would
have
simply not.
plenty. D3K
Oh,
too, but no,
ooh,
I'm actually kind of loving it. I don't know. I think this year more than ever I've been leaning into the seasons and this makes you lean in. Like
yeah, you
and I
have
think
to.
that's yeah, I don't know, I love it. Like our Airbnb here is very cozy. They very much lean into the hygge lifestyle, lots of twinkle lights, very like comfy, cozy. There's a sauna in our bathroom. Like it's
Oh
crazy.
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I forgot. You showed me this picture of this Airbnb so long ago, and now you're actually living in it.
I know.
Cool.
I feel emotional being here. Like it's very like this one in particular feels very much like a dream come true, but it's awesome. And I think what's cool here too is like in Buffalo, when it snows, like we get a lot of snow, but then it turns to slush. And it's like we're kind of always wavering on that 32-degree mark of like
Yeah.
it's snowing and then it melted and it's snowing and then it melted. But here it's just like it's so cold, like it snows and it stays. Like the
Yeah,
snow that's on the trees is cemented on the trees
I
and
love
it's just
that.
constantly white. Like all of the ground is white. And I think that's cool. As long as it's not windy, it's fine.
Yeah. Well, you will
Yeah.
also hear everyone in Buffalo complaining about the wind all the time. It's like a
The
trope
wind
at
is
this point.
wind is my least favorite weather.
Yeah, wind and like cold rain, I can't handle. Warm rain, fine. Cold, windy rain, absolutely not. But I
Yeah.
have learned that, like, in my attempt to lean into the seasons, more specifically winter, because I mean, Buffalo winter started like 3 months ago, basically, at this point. It snowed on Halloween. So I was like, okay, I'm really going to try to lean into this if I'm going to be here for the next couple months, whatever. And I realized that, well, I always knew I loved the snow at Christmas time, but I actually realized that I love the snow. My issue is exactly what you just described when the snow melts and it's just like the low gray skies and there's no snow on the ground because when that happens, it's just dark. Even when it's daylight, it's dark. But when there's snow on the ground, even if the sun isn't shining, it's still bright because the snow is white and it's covering everything. So you still feel kind of like, oh, like a little revitalized by that and that like cold, brisk, like snow on the ground air. It smells so clean and like fresh and it's so invigorating.
Yes, that's
As long,
exactly how it
yeah.
is.
And as long as it's not windy, like it's so great. And so I realized that like winter isn't my problem. It's the like the vacillating between like winter and whatever. Like March is the worst month in Buffalo. It's not January, it's usually March. But the problem is January is starting to look like March. So it's like that muddy, the snow is melted, everything's brown, and the sky is gray, and it's just like barren and desolate. But when there's snow and it's on the
I
tree, and everything is coated, it's magical and beautiful and totally tolerable. So
This is so metaphorical for like our discomfort with like uncertainty and the
yeah,
in-between stages.
it is. It is.
It's so funny.
Because you're just like, can we just get to that point? Exactly. But yeah,
Yes,
that's the part of winter for
totally.
me that like I can't handle easily. That's the part of winter that gets to me. That's the part that I think triggers my seasonal depression is like those days that are just like dark and gray and murky. Because whenever it
Yeah.
snows, like
Well,
I would wake up and Anthony would be like, "It snowed," and I'd be like, "Really?" And then I was like, "Oh, that's my knee jerk, like childlike, like soul reaction to that." It's not like ugh. So it means that I don't hate winter, which is a very cool realization for me.
yeah, I think we were saying too, we're like Buffalo needs something like Hugo, like that coziness. We just like it's
It's
kind
called
of
a
just
dive
like push
bar.
through. Yeah, well, it's like push through, make it to
Yeah.
summer. We're waiting for summer, and it's like this disassociation from like this uncomfortable in between stage.
Mhm.
Whereas like here, I feel like there's so many little implementations of the coziness. There's twinkle lights freaking everywhere here. And I'm
Love
not
that.
saying that's the solution, but it might be the
But
solution. Maybe we maybe we shouldn't take them down right after Christmas.
no,
But
I agree. I think that's so true. Like, leave your lights up. Why are you taking them down?
they're all out my window and they're not Christmas lights though. They're Hugo lights. Like they are the like the clear color. They're
Yeah.
not all festive. They're just like a light glow. Anyways, so that's the fun of Finland right now, and we're just enjoying it. So
For those of you who don't know what Jess is saying when she keeps saying hygge, she's saying the word that's spelled Hyggge, right?
yeah, it's a Danish concept for like warm and cozy. It's a lifestyle basically
Yeah.
that they embrace in this region that is more so like embraced in the winter. So it's going inside, having cozy blankets, twinkle lights, candles, warm tea, like slowing down, presencing, and being with that. Um, I think that's kind of how you describe it. We don't have an exact term in English that explains what hygge is. Like there's a whole song in the Frozen musical called
Yeah.
hygge, which is how we found out about it and we got obsessed with
Oh,
it. Like
that's
there's
funny.
yeah, well, there's a book on Audible called like Little Book of Hugo, and it'll explain the whole concept of it. And we've embraced it. I swear to you, my life has improved 300% since
Yeah.
learning about this concept. Because it just makes winter so much better. It makes rainy days so much better. And as a Taurus, I freaking love it.
I was gonna say, I bet you do. There's a Swedish concept, which maybe you'll learn about if you get to Sweden at any point. But it's
Yeah.
called fika, and it's like taking a moment in your day for like a moment of like pleasure, a moment of joy, having a
Oh.
slice of cake in the afternoon just because you can, and it's the afternoon, and why shouldn't you have some cake? Things like that. And I bought my
I
mom this
have to
book.
say, we do that right now.
Oh, yeah,
Didn't
absolutely.
even
It's just
know.
like basically what we like girlies always say is like just a little treat. Like
Just a
that's
little treat.
literally fika. Like taking a moment to like pause, have yourself a little treat, enjoy it, like be in the moment in the middle of your day or whenever. So I got my mom this book about it because she's Swedish. Her family is like actually very Swedish. She like leans way in. She owns a lot of Fair Isle sweaters. And it's really cool. And I didn't realize like how much this was an underlying part of my upbringing until I was an adult. And that's when I found out the fika and hygge kind of like go hand in hand. And it's so cool. And it's literally the thing we talk about all the time, like the two hands around the mug thing
Yeah.
and like just being cozy. And it feels so on brand that you're like there and leaning into it. And I love that. And that's like the best gift that winter gives you is the opportunity to just like be cozy and do less and
Mhm.
wrap yourself in a blanket and just like, ah.
Enjoy it.
Mhm.
because the seasons change and everything changes all the time.
Yeah.
So be where you are now and just enjoy because there's so much to love where you are. I don't think anyone's gotten more upset from more twinkle lights.
I know. That's like it's like the taking a walk thing. Like you don't feel worse after ever. Like nobody's been like, "Oh, that walk really killed me." Take a walk
But
and buy yourself some twinkle lights. That's the moral of this episode.
absolutely. Well, I feel fulfilled. I feel like the new year's off on a great start here over at Rediscover. Thank you guys again for your patience on waiting for a little
Yeah.
extra time on this episode, but it was worth it. I think that this
Yeah.
episode was meant to be shared in this way. Thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you always being here and catching up on life with us. So I hope you're feeling a little inspired after the new year has begun. Hope you're taking it slow and easy and easing into the new year with lots of grace. And we'll keep you updated on the journeys here. If you want to see any travel vlogs, I've got weekly YouTube
Yes.
vlogs coming out now. I just posted the Vienna Christmas market one a little bit after Christmas, but
Oh, that's okay.
that's a fun one. It's like a feature-length Vienna film. So if you're a Christmassy girly like me, it's a lot of fun. And as far as Rediscover goes, we'll be keeping up with our monthly episodes. So we'll see you again in February. So yeah, so we'll see you for the next episode. Thank you for being here.
Go be cozy. Enjoy your January. Enjoy your slow January.
Yeah, I think that was the name of our episode last year was like slow January, but I think it's a tradition we're going to keep up with.
Tradition. Well,
So
now we can call it like Hygge January.
yes, Huga for everyone.
Hygge for January. Go take a walk and buy yourself some twinkle lights.
Yep, that's your homework. Anyways, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for listening. We love you all, and we will see you in February.
Bye. I felt like that was a weird bye. I felt like the tone was different
You can
today.
do it again.
No, it's okay. I'll just leave this part in where I'm spiraling about
And
it.
we'll see you in January.
In February.
Oh my God. And we'll
Bye.
see you. And we'll see you in February.
Bye. That was better. That was better.
Outro, take 1.
Thank you for joining us. Oh, hold on.
Outro, take 2.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Rediscover.
If you haven't already subscribed, hit that button and join the Rediscover fam.
Come back on the first Tuesday of every month for brand new episodes.
If you're like us and you have opinions about everything, leave us a review on Apple or Spotify. Your positivity inspires our creativity, and we love hearing from you.
Follow us on Instagram at JessicaFaye508 and positively.Kristen.
And check out Jess's blog at theroadjusttraveled with 1l.com.
Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye!